Hey, Bill.
Hello, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ morning edition. We normally tape in the afternoon. Good morning, Vietnam.
I don't know if the bags under my eyes are a little bit more pronounced because of the hour. Although I've been doing the sleep training with Simone, so my sleep has been a couple notches better as of late. Perhaps I'll be slightly more coherent than usual.
Well, there's a little more coffee in my Irish coffee this morning, since we're doing this during the day. So, excellent. Well, last week we talked about the Bain attack and all the stuff about Romney's taxes and outsourcing and whatnot. And that took a toll, I think. And it's not completely over yet, maybe. Polling seems to indicate that it hasn't hurt, that it didn't really hurt Romney, which surprised me. Well, I should say it surprised me since we talked. I think when we talked last week, I said it was much ado about nothing. After the attacks were sort of relentless and didn't go away, I started to think, well, hey, regardless of whether or not they're legitimate, anytime that you're on defense for a sustained period of time, you're in trouble. But
even if the polls are in a holding pattern, you still could argue that they're making it hard for Romney to overtake.
That's true. You could have argued sort of an opportunity cost. If Romney wasn't playing defense, maybe he could have been on offense and could have, he could be ahead of where he is today. So, but there's the news story that I think is starting to get legs, which was actually something President Obama said on Friday, where he was, actually, this is something I think Elizabeth Warren brought up, right? This notion that if you're successful, you didn't do it alone. Right. I think that Obama, speaking without the teleprompter, committed a gaffe that kind of plays into some pre-existing notions about his worldview and the economy. And I think it looks like it's being pretty damaging.
Well, basically what's happened is he was giving the same kind of riff about if you are a successful business person, I think as you properly characterize it, you didn't do it alone. Someone else, invested in the infrastructure that helped you, help your employees get to work or help you ship goods. The education that allow you to have sharp workers. There was public investment that made that happen. So there's we live in an interconnected society. It's nothing that anyone does all by himself. I think is one. I think it's what the New Republic said. John Donne said "No man's an island." It's not that novel a concept.
Yeah.
But so about one part where the preceding sentence is about roads and bridges, and then he says, "If you own a business, you didn't build that." And so we've seen Romney and others take that part of it and suggest Obama saying, "You didn't build your own business." Well, I think if you read the full paragraph, it's pretty clear he's talking about the infrastructure, not the business itself. But clearly, Romney senses he's got an opening with this. He did a town hall in Ohio yesterday. People had signs up saying, Obama, you didn't build my business, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Romney
was picking up the signs
in the...
I have to say that the memes, these images, these graphics that people are putting on Tumblr and Facebook are quite fun and imaginative.
When even John Lovitz, the latest Hollywood turncoat, was mocking Obama. I don't know if he created the image or he just passed it around, but of Obama holding a Nobel Peace Prize, saying, you didn't earn that.
Right. There's one of the Wright brothers, inventing the plane, and it's Obama saying, "You didn't build that." And there's one of Steve Jobs with a Mac. "You didn't build that." I'm waiting for the "you didn't blog that," because then it really hits home. If you start saying "I didn't blog that," my God, now that those are fighting words.
So clearly, it's giving Romney something to talk about that's not his tax returns and Bain, which in and of itself is good for him. It's giving his team a sense of momentum, which is good for morale. But it's very early, and I don't think it is clear yet whether this is something that goes beyond the conservative Twitter sphere in and of itself. It actually resonates with the broader electorate, and I also think it's odd if you heard the full quote that Romney said yesterday, he went out of his way to qualify his own remarks and to say, of course we need others to build the roads and bridges. Of course we respect our teachers and our policemen and our firemen. And I made Jed at Daily Kos and Greg Sarge, the Watch Foot, say, and I think Progress said, wait a second, you're saying the exact same thing.
To me, I think it's about the emphasis. And then, by the way, this is interesting because there is this thing about community that is not necessarily a liberal thing. It's also a conservative thing. And then there's this thing about individualism, which is not just a liberal or conservative thing. So within both liberalism and conservatism, there's a strain of individualism and a strain of communitarianism.
Very astute.
And this really, I think, strikes at the rugged individualist nature of Americans. I mean, I think that the problem is that Obama is stressing the fact that this sort of communitarian aspect, it takes a village, but simultaneously downplaying the fact that people who've been successful have taken great risks and have worked hard. And that's the other side of the coin that I think Obama is downplaying. And I do think this hints at a larger part of his worldview. And I think that's why it's damaging, because this is actually similar to remember the Joe the Plumber moment with the spread the wealth around. When Obama says these things, I think it reinforces this narrative.
Well, this is Greg Sarge's point, that when the Joe the Plumber thing happened, Obama still won. So it wasn't...
That's true. That's true.
Even if it was damaging, it certainly wasn't all that damaging.
I think you're right. I mean, by the way, I will say, I think the most... And here it may be example of me being out of touch, perhaps. I felt like the most damaging gaffe, in my opinion, the most dangerous gaffe anyone made, and in the last maybe 5 years, was Joe Biden saying, "Mark my words, he will be tested. This is going to be like John Kennedy." I mean, I thought that should have blown up and been huge. No, just sort of not a big deal. Mm-hmm. So, but I will say this: the spread the wealth around thing. You're right. Obama won, but he won. There were bailouts. The economy's still struggling. The unemployment rate's still high. So the American public may be less forgiving.
This is the question. There is a difference of emphasis with both candidates, no question. And I think as the New York Times said today, there's some two distinct worldviews here being debated. Which, if I may brag, this goes back to one of my earlier debates with you. This election will be about something. It won't just be about a cheap shot at tax. There is some actual ideological meat here.
Yeah, you're right. This is the thing that I like about this debate, aside from the fact that Romney currently seems to have the upper hand. Not that I'm a huge Romney fan, but I think I'd take him over Obama. But the thing I like about this is it actually is a substantive debate, and we can actually talk. Like, you and I can have a whole conversation about this. Whereas there are other petty things that happen on horse race stuff that is just boring. Remember last week I was like, I'm bored with this, but this is interesting.
And this is something I think Obama didn't have to say this. There's no impetus that he had to make some broadly philosophical point in his stump speech. But you're making the presumption that this is a clear negative for him. And I mean, one, I think Obama said it because he believes it, and two, I think he wants to win with a mandate so he can do more things if he wins. But three, I think he believes that the public has an appetite for what he is saying. So to the extent that people are frustrated with the state of the economy, I think it's an open question. What do they blame for that reason? There's still a lot of polling evidence to suggest people believe that what Bush did is the problem, not as much as what Obama did. So Obama still has the opening to say the every person for himself attitude of the past decade is what got us in this mess. and we have to put some more emphasis on what do we do together, what do we invest in together to lift us up together, and try to put Romney back in the Bush corner and say he's just promising you the stuff that got us into the ditch in the first place. So that's why I wouldn't necessarily call it a gaffe, because I think the heart of what Obama's saying, I think, has political juice.
I do think that, assuming you're right that he was that when he said you didn't build that, he was referring to infrastructure, roads. Assuming that you're right, then it was a gaffe, because he. By the way, someone recently, one of the commenters in my blog recently, sort of mocked me for not using a lot of pronouns. So I'll say Romney did this, Romney did that, instead of he. And it's to avoid confusion, because when you're talking about multiple people, it's easy. The more specific, the better. It's a little bit less poetic sometimes, but it's clearer. And I think that, assuming you're right, that Obama was talking about bridges and roads, that the business didn't build that. You can still debate that. But because, rich people ostensibly pay more money comes from them in tax revenue and yada, yada, yada. But either way, assuming that you're right, it was a gaffe because Obama presented it in such a way that it could be easily taken out of context.
Well, I agree that, I think in the annals of inartful speaking, I think it's pretty mild offense, because I think if you look at the full paragraph, it's pretty clear what he was getting at. But you're right, the way that one part sentence fragment was constructed, you can misconstrue it. And there just was an article in The Hill that Obama was using the teleprompter less, going out on the stump for the campaign, wanting to seem looser, wanting to have better connections with the crowd and whatnot. And I'm not saying he was wrong to do that, but this does show why politicians use teleprompters. It's not because they're idiots who don't know what they believe in or just reading from a script.
Yeah.
They want to make absolutely sure. Sorry, go ahead.
And we see this happen in email. I remember I used to play, years ago, I used to play in a band. And there's a really cool little place I like a lot in Clarendon, Virginia, Northern Virginia, called the Galaxy Hut. And I was emailing with the owner. I think her name was Alice. It's now owned by the bartender Larry bought it. But I was emailing with her, and we wanted to do a weekend night, like a Saturday night, and she kept trying to book us for Tuesday nights. So she emails, and she says, "Can you do Tuesday the 17th?" And I reply back saying, "We're all booked up. How about Saturday?" Okay? Fast forward a week, and she's pissed off at me that we didn't show up Tuesday night. Who was right? Was I right or was she right? She said, how about Tuesday night? And I emailed back and said, "We're all booked up. How about Saturday?" Did I say yes or no to her? We never played there again. She was furious at me because on Tuesday night, the band didn't show up.
I think she had to confirm.
I needed a teleprompter, is what I needed. I mean, these little misunderstandings, and I think, if someone had written that and it had been vetted, maybe they would have caught the error. But again, here's the funny part. Obama was being more colloquial, more poetic, and sort of getting in the zone, right?
Right.
And so the downside of that is this. If he had been reading from a teleprompter, every word would have been perfect, but it wouldn't have been as cool or as laid back. So it is interesting. It's a double-edged sword.
And there was the clip that got leaked from Fox when there was the Fox mole for Gawker, and it had Sean Hannity and Mitt Romney talking about the teleprompter, and Sean Hannity makes a crack about Obama's teleprompter, and Mitt says, "Well, sometimes you really need a teleprompter because when you really want to say something just so, you don't want to get it confused. You want to make sure you say every word just as you want it."
Right.
And Sean's like, and so that's correct. Particularly when you're president, and every word could move markets or cause a foreign policy, a blow up. You don't want to screw around. The campaign trail, things are a little bit different. You want to make sure that you're connecting, but you run that sort of risk that a little flow can be blown up into a bigger deal.
Right. And again, to me, I would still argue that the context of this is irrelevant. Even if I assume your argument, I still think it betrays this worldview of Obama's that I think emphasizes community and that we're all in this together over entrepreneurism, risk-taking, individualism.
I don't think Obama would say he is prioritizing one over the other. I think he's trying to argue that that both complement each other. But I think in terms of the emphasis that he's putting on in his political speech, he's saying what we need to bulk up right now. We're not investing enough in our infrastructure right now. There's an infrastructure deficit. There's an education deficit. That's where we need to deploy some resources so our entrepreneurs will have a foundation to work off of.
Here's the thing. And I hear what you're saying. To me, I would like, when our politicians go to conferences, I would like for them to hear someone preach to them, get out of the way, let the individual, let the marketplace, don't create barriers to entry. It is the people who build government. It is people who provide jobs, not government. Then I would like rich business people to go to church, and I would like them to hear the preacher tell them, "You didn't get here on your own. You didn't do." So I think you're right. I mean, I would like my government officials to hear the rugged individualism, message, and I would like the rich business people to go to church and hear Obama's message.
Because I don't want to put words in your mouth. You're concerned that if our government is taking the role of the communitarian spirit, that it could lead to excess and squelch innovation and distort markets and the like. That's your underlying concern. You think the churches and other perhaps secular nonprofits can pick up the communitarian slack. Am I characterizing you correctly?
I don't know if that's right or not, but I will say I think, as you've said, that both of these things they're not mutually exclusive. We need individuals who take risks, work harder than others, and build businesses, and they should be rewarded for doing so. Simultaneously, we need to also realize that that we're all connected, that that community is important, but it goes to focus. And I would like our politicians to hear the message of stay out of the way. You don't create jobs. Individuals create jobs when they start companies. Don't mess that up. Then I would like to bring in our rich business people and have a preacher say, you need God in your life. You need other individuals in your life. This isn't because you're so smart. You didn't get here by yourself. This is so. I think it's a matter of emphasis, and I think that President Obama is clearly, in my opinion, emphasizing one side of this.
Well, so to get back to the politics of this, I presume you believe that it's more politically salient to emphasize the rugged individualist and not to emphasize we're all in this together. That the politician that emphasizes the rugged individualist, put yourself up for your bootstraps ethos, that politician tends to do better.
I think that it is. I think that it is part of the American ethos to believe, and this comes, by the way, from us being a new country and a country where people could basically move out west. If you were to study the sort of sociological aspect to this, you didn't have to sort of work your way up and play by the rules. You could move out west, start your own business, start your own thing, and you might fail. You could move out there and get kill, die, starve, whatever, or you could become wildly successful and wildly rich. And people moved out there chasing gold or whatever. So that is part of, there is this sort of uniquely American spirit, entrepreneurial, risk-taking thing that Obama is stepping on a little bit.
I think the Obama challenge and the liberal challenge is to argue that these two things are not in conflict with each other, and to say to jointly agree to invest in certain aspects of the American foundation is something that fuels the entrepreneurial spirit, fuels productive risk-taking, and fuels positive innovation, and maybe prevents the kind of innovation and risk-taking that ends up being a race to the bottom, that lowers standards, that leaves people out, and that sort of thing. And so it's a rhetorical challenge, it's a policy challenge.
Well, and by the way, I would say that what you just said describes my view. I mean, I would agree with everything you just said. The problem is, and Obama, President Obama, is good at rhetorically making that argument. The problem is I don't believe him, and he doesn't govern like that. I don't think liberals really believe that, and they don't govern like that. And President Obama is very good at rhetorically sort of mentioning the other side's viewpoint. The conservatives will say, and they got a good point, but there's always a but. This is sort of a straw man to tear down. So that is sort of his MO. So it's not so much the rhetoric, it's how they actually govern. And I think that this is a gaffe that President Obama made because it reinforces what a lot of people think about him, that his emphasis...
So this is I disagree with
this. This is John Sununu's comment about him being un-American, by the way.
I don't think there is this latent... Right, I mean, I know it's what Sununu meant. I just don't believe there is this latent view in the middle of the country that Obama is a heavy-handed, socialist-esque type politician, and therefore a comment like this brings forth all these deep-seated fears of what they were getting into in the first place. I know the conservatives, are sort of looking for, the proof in the pudding. We told you he was like this, and now you can see for yourself with your own two eyes. But I don't get the sense that the middle of the country is sitting there on the edge of their seat worrying that Obama was a much bigger socialist than they initially thought. So that's why I don't think this has the same kind of tripwire effect that the right might expect might come of this.
Well, let's have some fun with this, Bill, because I think this is a prime time for our viewers to try to selectively edit us. What? You can do this up here, up top, somewhere. There's a little timestamp that you can put in the URL string, and you can edit the Weekend blog by the time. So I'm sure that you or I have said something that could be taken wildly out of context, and we should do this for fun. You didn't build that. So let me segue. I think this is a good time to segue into what I would call, I don't know if it's a big idea, but a couple weeks ago, I was talking about how, in some ways, liberalism is more optimistic because liberals believe that America is resilient. It can take anything you want to put on it. You want to change what marriage means? America's strong enough to take that. You want to, whatever it is, we're resilient and strong. And conservatives, in a way, are pessimistic toward America, in the sense, very fearful that this is fragile. This is very special and very fragile. It's like a little kid, and you don't want to just let anybody watch it. You don't want to let it go down the stairs by itself. Liberals see it as incredibly resilient. It could take all sorts of social engineering. Conservatives are like, don't do that. You could mess up this fragile ecosystem. It is ironic that conservatives are more concerned about the political ecosystem or the social ecosystem, that it's fragile. Liberals think that the global ecosystem is fragile, but that the cultural and societal ecosystem is resilient. So that's ironic. So, but then I got to thinking, well, is that true? Like, are conservatives really more pessimistic, and are liberals really more optimistic? And that kind of brings us to the segue here with President Obama's line, "You didn't build that." I think that liberals. One of the things that I don't like about liberalism, and one of the reasons that I'm not attracted to it, it strikes me as boring. Like going to visit your grandparents, your old grandparents in a house that kind of smells weird. It's like sort of like, they're like, let me just give you one example. Liberals keep talking about this 5-day work week. Like, if it wasn't for us, you wouldn't have you'd be working 7 days a week. That's like one of the progressive things. Well, maybe they deserve credit for that. But does anyone believe that we're in danger of that? Like, if my boss tried to tell me we're going to go to a 7-day work week, I'd be like, "F you! I'm not going to. I'm going to find another job because it's a free agent nation."
But if you could find someone who wanted your job more, who was a little hungrier than you, maybe he would let you go.
Maybe they would, and then I would go, and then because I'm a rugged individualist and it's a free agent nation, I would find a way to be more like the reason that I'm. That I get.
Have you worked at Politico before?
Have I worked at? Politico? No, I wouldn't work there because they actually work. Work sucks. I don't want to have a tough job. My dad was a prison guard. He went to jail. He voluntarily went to prison for. Someone can take that out of context. He voluntarily went to prison for 35 years so I could write about Sarah Palin. I don't want a job. And guess what? The people at Politico, if they don't like it, they don't have to stay because they can start their own website. They can make money doing that. They can go somewhere else. We're not victims. And I think that liberalism, part of it, it's very pessimistic. Oh, don't leave your job. There might be another depression. Don't leave your job. Now, there is that sort of paranoid thing in conservatism too, where they want to sell you gold. A 12-year survival packet on Glenn Beck. But by and large, I think conservatives are more optimistic. Screw them. Go find another job. Start a business. Build a business. Go somewhere else. You'll be fine. And I think liberals are more like, oh, but if they don't give you that job, then you may, So I'm going to shut up for a second. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think there are optimistic and pessimistic strains on both sides, and I think, as far as the examples you're saying, I think liberals would argue that it's not that simple. We had a moment in history, around the Industrial Revolution, where people were being worked to the bone and didn't have power to demand a fair wage, and were forced to work longer hours than anyone should be humanly asked to work. And it took policies, it took laws to change that.
You didn't build that factory. I'm just kidding. No, I agree with you, and I think that sort of makes my argument that there was a time and a place when you needed like labor unions and you needed to collective bargaining or whatever. But those days have passed, and that's why I think there's an antiquated ideology.
But I think someone left might dispute that. I think there are people in this country that are working 6-7 days a week who are scraping by. And it may not be 7 days in one job, maybe because it has to be 2 jobs, and neither job has benefits. And so there is that whole strata of society that is not, is not able to have the traditional 5-day week, 2 days off of the family, enough resources to take 2 weeks off vacation and not worry about what that's going to do to your nesting.
Right, but think of the messaging. Okay, so the message that conservatives are telling that guy is: work hard so that your kids can live the American dream, can get paid to write about Sarah Palin, or find a better job. Don't think that you're a victim, that you're trapped there. Work hard, but look for something else. Work your way up. As opposed to the other messaging, which says you can't get ahead because the man's keeping you down. Because the rich people are paying their fair share. Don't even try to get ahead because it's a tough world out there. You're going to just have to keep working because you're being exploited by rich people. I mean, that's a negative viewpoint, and it hurts people. It hurts poor people, and I think that is part of the liberal. That's part. But I mean, again, there's a lot. We were talking earlier about this communitarian thing versus individualist. I mean, I see both sides of that issue, but this is why I'm conservative. I hate that negative viewpoint, that negative, pessimistic viewpoint that keeps people down. It really bothers me.
Well, you've seen Obama talk about this specific issue on the Stump, and I mean, I think there is a sense, and I don't think it's just on the left. I think this is something that pervades, working class America in general. That if you if you work hard and play by the rules, which is sort of the standard, polished way to talk about it. If you do that, you do your due diligence. That you're not getting the basic bargain in return. You're not getting a comfortable 5-day work week, 2 weeks vacation, and the health benefits everyone should have, even though you're doing the right stuff.
Right. But then the question is, who's responsible for that? I would say you are. If it's not going right, move. If you live in Detroit and you can't find a job, move to North Dakota and work in the oil industry. Bring your kids out there, or take night classes. Or start, whatever it is. I would say that the onus is on you, the individual. Take responsibility, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and find a way to become successful, or at least make sure your kids go to college.
Well, if you're in a situation as is right now, where there are more unemployed people than job openings. I mean, that's just a statistical fact. We're coming off of a particularly bad recession, and it's been a slow recovery. If everybody tried to move where the jobs were, not everyone would get a job. But they just aren't there right now. So there has
it's true. This is micro advice, not macro advice. I mean, but my point
politics is the macro. Politics is about the macro. Should there be macro things that we're doing to accelerate the recovery, or is there, if government tries to do that, they're just going to muck it up, and therefore if you sit back and let the market work itself out where those jobs eventually come? And that's the debate, right?
Well, I do think that the advice you give an individual versus public policy decisions are two different things. But right now I'm talking about the message that we're sending people. And I think that the message that we send people, if the message people are hearing is, you can be successful, you can do it, versus you can't do it, they're keeping you down, things are horrible. Because I think that, let's look at like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson as a prime example. And by the way, this is something that Adam Carolla has been talking about a lot lately. I tend to agree with them. They're not terribly interested in talking about things like, the big problem. Look at this Brookings Institution thing. The Washington Post and the New York Times have both had stories about this Brookings Institution story, which says, if you get a job, stay married, and have kids after you're married, there's like 90% chance that you'll avoid poverty. That's a great message for any community, especially the black community. I don't know how much time Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson spend, though, as leaders of that community, stressing that issue. I wish that they would spend more time doing it as leaders in that community. But I think that they have an incentive to increase racial disharmony, because that's essentially their job. They don't want to go out of business. I think that it's counterproductive. So I think that the messages that leaders send really do matter.
Well, I think if you look at Obama's rhetoric on this subject, I do think he pairs individual responsibility and love for entrepreneurial risk taking with the macro. Here's what government should do to buttress that message. I don't think he is trying to send a message saying government solves all your problems, sit at home, nanny's going to take care of you. I mean, if you fairly read the context of all these sorts of remarks, you capture both sides of that coin. As far as the activist side is concerned, I mean, I'd say a similar thing. I mean, the focus is always on the macro. not every activist is going to be taking the role of the self-help motivational speaker. Now, maybe somebody can do that, somebody can play that role, and if you're a church leader or a social worker, you want to be talking in those ways. So people are taking. I have friends who are social workers, and they certainly try to instill personal responsibility into folks, even if they have liberal policy views. They don't just say sit around and let the government take care of you and don't worry about taking care of your own business. But I think it's hard to have to juggle all of those messages at one time all the time.
Right. Well,
when you're trying to focus on the specific policy challenge that we're facing.
No, I think you're right. I'll just come full circle. Because I don't know if I hit my main point because I got on a rant there. My main point is that my experience, at least, has been that the conservative world is sort of exciting. It's sexy girls and fast cars, and you can be successful. You can live your dream.
I will put that out of context, sir.
Take it out of context. But I'm serious. It's like glossy. It's like a glossy magazine. It's you can be successful. You can do it. Just dream it. Do it. And maybe some of this is quixotic and naive. But again, I don't want you to think that I'm like again, my dad was a prison guard, so. So it's not like I come from a really sort of charmed background, but
your father, I assume, was a government worker.
He was he worked for the state of Maryland, and he had been part of, I think, AFSCME until he became an officer, and then they weren't, I guess, allowed to be part of that union or something. I don't even know. Mm-hmm. But he went to jail voluntarily for 35 years, so that I could go to college and all that. And by the way, he died in 2004, and I'm pretty sure, my theory, I think that stress of that job put him in an early grave. He was like 57. But nevertheless, my viewpoint has always been that conservatism is that sort of exciting world where you can do it. And liberalism is more like going to school. You get on a bus early in the morning and they ship you to this dystopian bureaucracy where you're told what to do and fed these politically correct. Now, maybe it's just my viewpoint, but in this regard, conservatism to me is more optimistic. It's that leadership speaker. It's that self-help book. That's conservatism. And then liberalism is more like, you can't do it on your own. You're going to need help. You're going to need government. What if something goes wrong? Something could go wrong. You could get out of work. You could. So,
well, I think there's an element of being responsible parents and on the liberal side of things, as opposed to let the kids bust into the alcohol can.
It's mommy. Well, that's the mommy party and the daddy party, right?
I mean, I do think there's some of that, but I do think liberalism does hold a lot of excitement and promise as well when you're talking about having a clean energy future or zipping across the country through high-speed rail.
I like high-speed rail.
I know you do. Or just having these building blocks of having good health insurance, so you don't have to worry about it, so you can have the freedom to have disposable income to enjoy time with your family and be able to take vacations and such. It's still holding out a promise of having a enjoyable quality of life and not just being a worker drone. There is that side of liberalism too.
No, I'm for all that stuff. And by the way, I should say that I worked 5 years at Andrews 40 West Amico in Frederick, Maryland. I worked at restaurants where I wanted to unionize them. I know what it's like. I know what it is like to work.
I won't quote that out of context.
I worked at a place called Watson's, which is now defunct, but it was an institution in Frederick, Maryland. And their management, Adam Carolla has a new book out called Not Taco Bell Material. My book would be Not the Watson's Way, because I was told I had to do things the Watson's way. But no, their managerial style was to view you as a robot, as something easily replaceable, a cog in the machinery, so to speak. I mean, I know what it feels like to work that kind of job. And the funny thing was, the people who were there a long time, the lifers, were so
beat him down.
Well, they were so deferential. They were so, and I took a semester off and worked full time, 40 hours a week there. And
their spirits are broken.
Their spirits were broken. They were so deferential to the, oh my, don't do that. Charles wouldn't like that. Oh my God. And I went to one woman who was a waitress there. And I'm like, what? She was like, I took a semester of college 18 years ago and I'm still here. You know what? That taught me to go back to college. It really did. And thank God I had the opportunity to go back. But I did, and so I know what that's like. But I also fear like to become part of that system, that bitterness, to see yourself as a victim, that you need help to be taken care of, that you can't. I mean, so these are two different worldviews. I like the vision that you painted of that liberal utopia. I do like that. I would say that, to me, I hope that the future, is I think about people managing now you can get online and you manage, transfer funds. Anybody does it. You go to wellsfargo.com or wherever you bank, bankofamerica.com or whatever. You can transfer funds. You don't have to go to that line. Now, maybe Obama might think that puts somebody out of work, but I like that. You can manage your own stock portfolio online. You can start a business and sell stuff on PayPal. You can do. It's just amazing, the technology. That's the kind of future that I'm excited about. To me, that fits into the.
But all Obama said there is that the government research made the internet so you could do that. The government research gave you the platform so you'd have the freedom to do those sorts of things.
Well, I think there you go again. I think we just reached a good place to stop and to show that although we both hope we both have kids now.
We do,
and so we both want a bright future for them. I think we disagree maybe on how that's going to happen, but interesting.
Someday your kids and my kids are going to be riding Obama Rail together and having a great time.
Drinking Victory coffee. Drinking Victory coffee, putting these DMZ episodes down the memory hole so that they're never talked about. All right, man. Well, I hope this spurs some thought, some discussion and thought and debate.
I think we always do, Matt. That's what DMZ is all about.
That's right. Good times. Well, until next time, do you have any messages for the audience? So aside from taking us out of context, wildly out of context, and making these little videos, check us out, DMZ Show, at DMZ Show on Twitter, and stay tuned. We'll be back next week.
Take care.
Thanks.